Hello. Thank you guys for joining. We'll get started here shortly, ideally. Just a couple more minutes and we will get started. Looks like most people that are in here are regulars, but just, the same old. If you have questions, feel free to put in the chat or something. If that works for you, it works for me. Like I said, if you have something you want us to start putting some eyes on, feel free to put it in the chat. QA, something along those lines. If not, I will just do some improv, as I always do. So feel free to put something in the chat. And if you don't, I'll just kind of cover the same things I generally cover. I'll try and find something new and interesting to uh, learn while we lunch, but who knows? Today might be more of a lunch day than a learn day. All right, it's 12:05. I'm just going to start talking. Yeah, thank you for joining. Decisions, lunch and learn. Today is Tuesday, July 30th of the year 2024. On the top right of the screen, I hope I'm screen sharing. We have the QR code, which I know you can't really scan from a computer, but it is for the YouTube channel where we post all these. And the bottom right, Decisions Solutions Marketplace, where we have kind of accelerators and small top projects that you can import in and kind of decrease the friction to deployment. It has some build outs for you. I'm not going to give you the full like I always do because all the people that are in here have seen it 100 times. But one thing I do want to just reiterate on that I always do. But we always have events going on, and we do have a couple here in Virginia Beach, where we are located. So, um, upcoming events, you'll notice here we've got two. One in September in about a month and maybe 5 weeks, something like that. 5 weeks, a month and a week, and then we have one in November as well. So these are free little boot camps they call them. We have a foundations level course, and we have like an expert or science level. But it's just a great resource if you're coming and you're trying to learn decisions. It's a good way. They are free. Once you get here, we don't fly you out or anything, but or host you. There's nowhere to sleep in this office, but if you can get here and find a place to host yourself, the events are free, and you do get fed. So at least there is a free element, a perk. You get some 3 days of free food. But that is kind of a one. And then the last little bit here I'll cover just because I know that they've been spending a ton of time on it. Tomorrow, tomorrow we have the rules in healthcare, and we have industry folk coming in talking about how they have used decisions in their business or in their processes. So we have people that are not working for decisions that come are going to come in and talk about the process, as well as we have some decisions folk. But live demo real benefits. You can read the screen here for all the intel that I'm going to tell you, but that is there for you. So again, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tomorrow, basically shortly after the lunch and learn, if you're going to that, you can fill your whole day with decisions learning. All right. Kind of get started here in about 60 seconds of me just doing some improv. It doesn't look like we're having any questions in the chat or QA or anything, so I'll just kind of bounce around and talk about some things. Again, feel free. We have people on the sideline that can do some research. I know that you guys have had some questions in the past couple of days, but we will see. All right, here we go. We'll just start talking. Welcome. Yeah, so I'll just kind of do some bouncing around, maybe some stuff that I've been stumbling into. But I don't really have any real layout of just things I want to talk about. So I'll probably just be doing some exploring until a question comes in or something along those lines. Um, I'm in version 9. You can kind of tell by the blue header. I know the blue header exists in version 8 as well, but it's not really the place you work in, Portal and Studio. Um, I guess I can kind of show you. Let's go back into that project. One thing I think is like, just cool. I know we kind of talk about this a lot, but a lot of these management tools that exist in projects, and we spoke this morning. We had a company-wide meeting talking about how um, this project architecture is here to stay, keeping things more independent and moving forward with project-based things. I know it was a huge paradigm shift for a lot of people that may be migrating from version 8 to above because they kind of create these large loops of things. But in version 9, things are all kind of containerized into a singular thing called a project. And you have these management tools that allow you to track information about them seamlessly. So this isn't something I set up. You probably saw I just made this project, but things along these lines are just useful tools for people that, as you get building and you have a team working with you, keeping track on, you know, the health and the stability of your project. A lot of that stuff can be found in the info tab as well. Um, you know, validation issues across your project. I have no elements, so it's not going to show me any. To-do lists, you can add a to-do list and say, hey, I want to do this, and I'm going to assign it to a particular user so that they know what the next steps are, or assigning it to yourself before you leave for the day. So, um, you can assign something to yourself before you leave, saying, hey, tomorrow's task, let's put a date in there like a normal person, 7/31/2024 tasks. And you could say, you need to do you need to finish the form, something along those lines. And you could save it. And now there's a to do task. I assigned it to myself, but so that when you come in the next day, you kind of have this order in which you can um, work through your project. Because as both of you know, or everyone here knows, the projects are almost always multi-day, multi-week builds, and it's nice to kind of keep track of what you've been doing. But again, you can save things. You can add check right there, clear it out, and you could remove these filters. Let's go with any, and there's that task with a check mark. It's saying 59 minutes ago, but I think that's just a where this is hosted versus where we have the date and time set up in the actual instance. But that's just my initial guess. But the to-do list can be helpful in just terms of keeping track of what you need to do. Like if you walk away from a project or you are signing, hey, I need someone to go and run unit test for me, you can add that there. All entities is just going to be all the entities of your project. We don't really have anything in this project just yet. And unit tests is great as well. You can kind of consolidate and organize all of your unit tests within a project, and you can run them all from this screen as well. So if we have a flow, it'll as we create these unit tests, they will show up there, and you can actually run them all at one time. So it allows you to kind of like check the overall health of everything going on in your project at one time, just making sure everything passes out the way that you want it to. We can just make these constants for now. Actually, I'll make one dynamic. We'll do some flow data type stuff, maybe like start time or something like that. What would be a good time one? Do something like start time. And save this. We'll actually kind of build this out a little bit differently. Just add our give ourselves some time here. So we have information. We'll actually make that given input to this flow something that'll populate as well. So now we save it. Let's make some unit tests, right? And we could say, I'm not sure if this will actually work because I'm saying if something equals something. Who knows if that'll actually work in our favor here. Nice. But notice how when I add that unit test and save it all out, now under unit tests, I have one. And again, it allows you to run all your tests at one time. And you can kind of just say, okay, let me kind of populate these things. It's passing because information equals information, which it always will. But again, you know, the more unit tests you have in your project, the you can run them all at one time or you can run them individually. So you can run the test, run all tests for a particular flow. You can edit the unit test from this area, and again, it will kind of give you those options as well. Issues will consolidate all your issues, your validation, both warnings and fatal things that will not allow your flow to run. It will consolidate them, and this is a great place to look at functionality when upgrading from version 8 to version 9. You can use issues as kind of a jumping off point to the things that you need to resolve once you kind of do go through and update. But those are kind of some of these cool features on this info tab. This info tab right here just allows you to pick a primary entity and configure your project settings, which are down here. But you can pick a primary entity and say, hey, I want to have this unit test flow be like, you know, the heart of this project so that when I go into this project, I can just edit it or run that flow without having to navigate underneath that folder structure to find the things that I want. Oh, we got some more people dropping in. But yeah, so that's some of the, we've, going through and talking about the info tab. When it comes to health, there are health scores now that are associated with your project, which is another way to kind of keep yourself organized in terms of if I had to hand this project off to someone or test the overall functionality of your project. Now, without a lot of elements in this project, I have a relatively low score. I can tell you for sure it's because I at least did not rename this step. So if you're interested in the health score, you can look underneath these subdrops and it will tell you why you may not be scoring high. So I did add a unit test to kind of show off that unit test tab, but you'll notice that I get a 50 here for unit test. I don't have any error handling steps, and I did not provide a clear description so that other editors can understand why this design exists. So you can say, oh, I want this to be a healthy project. So you can kind of work your way through and change some of that stuff. This flow exists to show off version 9 project hub features. That's one. I know that was one thing that we needed to change or save. We also needed to add an additional unit test. And we'll see if we can. Info 2. And as we go through, we're still going to leave this information equals information just so that we know it passes. And again, in those unit tests, you can use these to just you can use these to just run flows. But if you want to utilize that um, unit test functionality on the Project Hub homepage, you want to make sure you actually set up a rule that says like, hey, on the output of this, what am I expecting and what am I getting, so that you can get that green check mark when you run the tests. But I'm just for now trying to get myself to a 100 score for my project health so I can feel happy about it. So I'm recalculating my score here. We have a float name. Short descriptions may be adequate. Okay. Well, now we need some longer information in there. We need error handling and probably adding another unit test or so. But we'll see if we can add some real great text here. Save that. See if we can add another test here. And we're going to test this one. We're going to make sure this one path fails here. So we're going to go next equals information equals, and we'll select from flow and we'll pick something that it will never equal. It will never, ever equal that. So it's still saying to add more unit tests, which I'm not going to do. But let's add some error handling. And error handling is one of those things too that I think is a little bit elusive to folk. Um, and really, all you're doing is um, you're setting up infrastructure so that if things fail, you are automatically notified, or that you can implement fixes in that exception handling. The easiest exception handling that I'm familiar with is using catch exception. So what this will do is if any of your steps have an exception, it will kind of go to here. And if I set up some type of problem, some type of issue here that it can't populate, 0 divided by 0, whatever the issue is, rather than stopping your flow right here and just being like, oh, couldn't run it, it will kind of send it to this as if it's a start point, as if it's a green start point, and you can put steps after that to log or auto fix some issues. You can attempt to rerun flows. Um, you can uh, set up provisioning to contact a very particular person. Like, hey, you can send up an end form so that it pops up and notifies the user, like, hey, an error has occurred. Please contact your administrator. Um, but we'll just say the exception message here. And you have various different types here about how this is set up. We'll do a log, and then we will do and inform. We'll do one more end form session here. Display a message, and we'll just again select this from flow. So about the exception message, something along those lines. So we're going through and kind of logging some of that information. So again, as we go, as we build, our score is getting a little bit lower. But um, again, if you're joining, feel free to put a question in the chat. I'm kind of just talking about version 9 stuff. I noticed that, there's some stuff that's still a bit elusive, but hey, and it even gives you descriptions on how you could fix these things. It's just a matter of kind of trying to get it up to 100, and I'm not going to rerun it until I do. But so we've kind of talked about it a bit so far. We've talked about some of this management stuff. We've talked about info, um, public folders. Again, this has changed from version 8, version 9. Version 8, you can make a folder and adjust permissions and have it be that way. But in version 9, if you're going to have any end user facing data or ways that people can access decisions without logging in, it's going to need to be in this public folder. Um, because again, over here in my actual project, if I go to make a folder, the only option is this designer folder. Even if I right click and go, okay, I want to create a folder, it's still a designer folder. The only option that you'll have of what used to historically be a normal folder or a standard folder is in this public folders area. So if you're used to that kind of paradigm and making dashboards and things like that, or end user facing information, you're going to want it to be in that public folder for it to pop up. And again, a lot of the system settings are in here as well. You can run scheduled jobs from a project and have them kind of isolated and independent in that project, or you can run them at a system level. The same options under jobs and events, you can run scheduled jobs here as well based on different things. So again, I have some on here, S3 logic, just delete screenshots, things along those lines, but that is that information right there. Yeah, so we've kind of gone through almost all this. Security, similar. It's available at system level as well, but you're given more insight here to the actual project permissions rather than just folder permissions, and you can kind of view within there those things. named sessions, again, very similar to how it was in version 8. And we talked about this. It by default comes with this folder scaffolding, but just a thing to note as well, just because I'm kind of filling air here, is if I'm in my major designer project and I just create a flow or create a rule, create a form, create a page, it's not going to by default put it in my flows folder, unfortunately. And that's because you might not want it to go in there. You might want it to be somewhere else. Although it is a um, form, you might want it to be in your report section or something along those lines, or a pages section because you utilize it as a part of a page. And you're like, I want to keep all of this information kind of organized in the same way. So when I create a flow, test flow that won't go into folder, you'll notice that when I create that and save it, it's now here under flow, right? I can still move it into that flow section, and now we have it organized that way. But if I am in this flow section and I create a flow, it will be in folder. And you'll notice as I save this, this one will actually populate in there. It will be in it because I started it from that area. Because again, there's plenty of instances in which you may not want all of your forms to be in one place or all your reports to be in one place. You might think, making a dashboard, I'm going to put the reports associated with that dashboard into the pages section so that when I click on pages, it's all the stuff related to making that dashboard, not just the skeletal structure of that page. And then you got to navigate over, oh, my reports are over here, or so on and so forth. So those can be really helpful as well. Dependencies has changed. Um, One thing I will say that I have found that I think if you are, even if you are more advanced and you're working in 9, it's just a worthwhile thing. I'm not going to be able to reproduce it right away just because it's not something that is easy to reproduce. But you may find that if you create dependencies and then you go and remove that dependency, or try to, it'll be grayed out and say you cannot remove this dependency because we're using elements in a particular project. So I've run into that before where I'm like, I know for a fact that I'm not using any of these elements because it doesn't exist. Like I'm searching for it, like it doesn't exist. Um, and what you can do is, I believe it's under management. Find it on here. But you're given the option to rerun dependencies. So if you find yourself in a position where you can't remove something and it says it's dependent and you've like done your due diligence and you're like, I know for sure it's not being used in this project. I don't know why. You are given that option um, under dependencies. You might have to right click on them, but it'll give you the option when you see it to rerun that dependency. And that can be, it's like if you get it removed and this is grayed out and it says you can't do this because it's being used by something. Um, you'll be given the option to right click it and recheck your dependencies or refresh your dependencies. But again, without it being locked like that, I'm not giving that option. But just be aware that just like with health score up here, you can um, just like with health score, you can recalculate. You're given the same option once you have dependencies that are actually utilized to recalculate dependencies, and it will say, "Oh, I notice now that this is no longer in this area." And notice how as I recalculated its project health, it actually went down. But yeah, that's a high level version 9 overview of a bunch of the stuff. And I'm sure most people in here probably have some assumptions on those, but at least that, unless you've done the dependency thing, you might not know that is an option. CSS, it's project based now as well. You can add it in the system level, but it's also nice to be able to add a CSS document just to the project so that when you migrate out or between environments, that stuff will carry over a lot more cleanly than stuff in the system folder. Because again, moving forward, kind of the paradigm is that you'll be able to export a project and it will just work, a singular project, rather than you have this huge ecosystem and you try and bring a singular project to production and it's missing things between the environments. It allows you to kind of keep things consolidated and organized. Again, there's just lots and lots and lots of options here. I could talk about it for days, but I choose not to. So that's been about 30 minutes. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'd love to take a look at it. Or if you want to teach me something, I'd love to do some learning. I'm here to lunch and learn as well. Primarily learning at this point, but lunch will be shortly, I guess. Projects, history, another great useful tool in version 9 that may not be something that you might have utilized in other iterations or you're utilizing at all. But just looking and saying like, okay, who did what when? When I left work yesterday, it was all working. And now when I came in this morning, it's not working. You can look and say, hey, what user did what? And then maybe go chat with them about the things that they had done to maybe make some changes, or at least it'll be give you some intel on how to find that stuff. So again, we can go this month, filter it out. I just made this project today, so you're not going to have anything extended, but allows for filtering up here. Another thing I will say, I think it's just, an important point. We've kind of been rolling out this process mining training. So if you're interested in learning more about process mining and how it can help you in your organization and your workflow and making sure that you are optimized and you are performing, your flows are performing well, and the movement of data is performing well, feel free to reach out to training@decisions.com and we can kind of forward you some of that stuff so that you can learn about process mining. It's its own separate application. So I'll kind of do a quick little pop over to it. I'm going to have to figure out how to find it again. It's its own application. Let's hopefully this work. Once you run it, it will give you a URL here, which you can then pop in. You'll have to leave this application open, but in the URL, we'll take a quick look at it and kind of bounce around, and if it ever loads. And again, with running Zoom and Teams and audio and all that stuff, it's kind of taxing on the machine. See if this starts in the next 30 seconds or so. What else do we got here? There we go. So it gives you this URL. And again, when I load it up, hopefully it will work for me. Nice. Oh, my trial license. I got to get a real one, huh? But it'll allow you to look at processes. Things will be color coded based on their efficiency. So red is the least efficient, and then you can also sort things by a number of like how many times that thing was used, how popular that item is, things along those lines. But see if I can import a file here. I know I've got one from somewhat recently. Oh, patient info report is what I'm looking for. You'll have to allocate, and again, you'll have to go through and kind of allocate some of this stuff, but let's see if we can just import it. Case ID log must be specified. But yeah, just again, feel free to reach out. We are kind of running on time here. But within process mining, you're kind of given options to look at how efficient your process is. Yeah, it looks at log data. It says, hey, again, based on these colors, things along these lines, how often they're utilized, what the handoff times are, how many loopbacks we have, things along those lines. But again, if you want more information on this, it's not something I could possibly cover in the next 20 minutes. So I'll save some mystery on that. But again, feel free to reach out to training@decisions.com. We've been working diligently on kind of getting it out live and getting it updated so that it's the most effective for you. But it is, a good option for you. Lots of knobs and levers in here, but it takes a Excel file, CSV file from decisions. You can also utilize data structures within decisions. I believe it's case studies folder, flow execution extensions, and there's an actual data structure called process mining data structure that has some built-in features for you that will make it so your process is a little bit more seamless. Again, here we are, data structures, create data types, and there's one in here that's actually for process mining. Not the quickest reader here. Oh, here it is, process mining. Geez. So you can create a process mining flow structure. And again, you're always going to have these three kind of processes and then map things into them so that it is more seamless for you. Because again, this case ID activity and complete timestamp is what we utilize here to kind of get this information. So there are built-in features into decisions to help kind of the transitory period between exporting your data or running flows and processes in decision and actually being able to assess their effective and efficientness. And this kind of will give you insight to where in your process you might have some overlap or things along those lines, or underlap where you don't have the resources needed to do things in a certain amount of time. And it will take and look at your process for you. So again, notice how the colors, again, red for 4 hours, green for 22 minutes, orange for somewhere in the middle, yellow for somewhere in the middle. They are kind of color coded in that capacity. So you're given lots of options, lots of knobs and levers, but that's something, again, we'll save for another day, or maybe let you be exploratory and download it yourself. We do have like that 14-day free trial. So if you're just interested in looking at it with a relatively low cost of free, there's a 14-day trial. So if you're using Decisions and you want to try it for 14 days, you do have that option. You can get it from our website in this area. So I believe it is under resources, download. You'll log in with the same credentials you use to kind of get Decisions. I'm going to log in as an employee because that is what I am. And you're given the option to download process mining. You'll have to then kind of set it up. There's an installation guide that walks through that process, but basically you want to point it to wherever you are hosting your actual Decisions instance so they can speak together more effectively. But you'll point it to that, and then once you do it, you'll be able to run it and take files, exports, but a lot of that information is on here. So any other final questions, comments, concerns, anything along those lines? Or so we did about 40 minutes here, so I'll probably start to work my way out. All right. Thank you very much. So yeah, next week we have, or not next week, tomorrow. Tomorrow we got Jared, smartest guy I know. So if you have any big, huge brain questions, tomorrow's the day to let him loose, because Jared is, again, probably the smartest guy I know when it comes to this kind of stuff. So if you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can reach out to training@decisions.com. Or if you have technical stuff, remember, support@decisions.com is a great resource for you too. If it's outside, the scope of the training world, if you're just having technical issues, you're probably going to want to go to support. And if you're having conceptual concepts and you want training or you want training materials, training@decisions.com is your best bet. But for now, I'll go ahead and end it. Like I said, we're about 40 minutes in. So I will catch you guys on Thursday. Thank you very much.